This guy's looking pretty good now, but there's definitely some areas that still need some work. Also just not really liking that shield. So I'm going into my details layer. I just collapsed the layer mask. Don't really need that anymore. So just start working on it. I'm going to add some more detail in the neck area here. So I'm just grabbing colors that are already in the image. Add a little bit of shadow kind of around the head. Just to pop that out a little bit. Some additional mechanical stuff back in here on his neck. I'm going to need to go work on that face quite a bit. I'll get the neck done first. Just add some little bolts and details stuff. Don't need to get too precise in here. Just hint at things. Separate out his chin piece. I'm going to need to just paint in on the other side here. Okay. I think when it rendered out, again because of the geometry, the reflection on it, it's kind of making the form seem a little bit weird, so I'm just going to go fix that up. So I think I'm going to make the face a little bit more humanoid. Not too much, but maybe just a little bit. Faces are pretty important, as I've mentioned before. Maybe give it kind of a nose type shape in here. It's looking kind of cool. Add some kind of panel lines in here. Separate out the jaw from the kind of jaw muscle shape. Those little thorn things on the side. Bring out that profile a little bit. Adjusting the eyes. If you remember, I had tons of details in those kit bash eyes I have, but you can't see them at all from this kind of distance, so don't be too attached to your geometry or to your render. Feel free just to paint over that stuff. You can't be married to anything. It's starting to come along. I like the kind of skull nose that's happening there. Add some vents up here in these horns. I think that's looking pretty cool. Man, I wish I would have added turbo smooth on those Gatling guns, but it's not that big a deal. Need to paint in some thickness on this chest piece. I didn't put a shell modifier on it in Max, but it's easy to do. There we go, kind of hide some of the geometry there with a little bit of shine. Put a little bit of underlighting on the forms, just to, again, just pop them out, define them a little bit more, and some shine on the edges here. The light might hit it. Freckles, as some people call them. So here we got a little bit of a hole in the geometry. It's not necessarily bad, but just don't want it to be distracting. Just make it look like it has some purpose, not like a mistake. Here our shoulder pad is kind of clipping through that piece underneath, so I just want to clean that up. Some weird lighting going on here. So just going around and seeing what pieces So this is just on my details layer. Just using the soft brush, just a little bit of fall off. Not too much. Just kind of manually painting in panel lines and other things. I can always come back and use my smudge brush just to soften things up a little bit. But we're pretty zoomed in right now, so from how you normally would see this, you wouldn't really notice it. The kind of roughness of it, but it might be worth it to clean up a little bit more. So here I'm just kind of taking inspiration from what's already there. Developing it out a little bit more. Pulling colors from what I have in the model. Here I'm just using my shape tool again. It's starting to look pretty cool. Just going back in, emphasizing some of the panel lines a little bit. Highlights on the edge of this thing. Top of the hand guard. Playing with the panel lines on those forearm knife things. Putting little tiny bolts in there. Just trying to make these pieces look like they work together, look like they might have some purpose. Some tight little shines on them. This finger needs some work still for sure. From this view, you pretty much can't see that other thumb he had in the background, but that's fine. So now that we changed our face some, our lights don't really line up all that well. So I have to go in and change that up. So I'm trying to blur it here, but it's not really working too well. See how it looks if I add a little bit more shine here. I don't know about that. I think it emphasizes the nose too much. Looks too much like a nose. So I'm just kind of going to start over here. Maybe a Cyclops eye type thing. Yeah. I think it's best just to go back to the two main eyes. That's looking pretty cool. I'm just going to try something else out here. Those little finger things. I think they look alright, but then kind of from a distance it's just a little noisy. Just going to try and cover these up. Some additional piece on here. So again, just grabbing colors from the image, pull them back. That's kind of nice. Cleans it up a little bit. Trying to get it to work with the lighting. I think that's working pretty cool. Kind of like a Robo Ninja mask or something. So here I'm just going to go ahead and add some little point lights other places throughout the body. Start off by just kind of painting in where the actual light is, and then just doing, you know, a larger brush showing the glow. Here I'm kind of hitting it. Maybe there's some lights back behind the shield. Maybe it's just bouncing off other things. Having some little blue lights on there. So now that I got my lights on my camera down there, I'm going to add my lens blur to it. Add it again up to the second pair of eyes up here. I think it's looking pretty cool. Need to keep working it, but don't want it to be too strong. So just adding some more little point lights. Little lights equals futuristic technology stuff. If it was a hexagon light, that would be like super technology. Trying some different shapes of these lights in here. That's not bad. So again, just putting these little point lights all over the place. Don't want to go overboard. Naming my layers. So I can quickly turn it off. So here I'm adding another overlay layer, and you can see I go up to my paint bucket, go to pattern, and I have a number of patterns set up. This is one kind of a brushed metal pattern I have, and so I just apply an overlay layer, add a layer mask, and then I just go in and, you know, paint my layer mask all black, brightness. So the areas where it's real bright, you know, you kind of leave it away from there, and areas where it's real dark, not so much in there. But it really depends. Certain materials, certain images will receive these kind of overlays much better than other ones. But you can see then how in a lot of the areas where, like that thigh, where I didn't get too carried away with making the reflections look perfect, because then when you go back and put a texture on top of it, actually the imperfections in the rendering underneath actually help to make it look more realistic with the texture on top. So here I'm selecting selecting the transparency of that layer and just deleting everywhere where it's not a part of that. Except that down here near the feet, though, I've got included in that alpha mask is some of the shadow, which I really shouldn't have rendered it out with the shadow, but I'll have to go in and fix that. It just means more work for me, but it's not that big a deal. So here I'm just kind of messing with the background. Some of the profile of the head was getting lost in there, so just kind of brightening it up behind it. So I'm starting to think about the hologram shield, if I should do something to that to make it work better. Add an overlay to that. Again, there's another one of my pattern overlays. Hexagon one. Hexagons on hexagons is like super duper duper futuristic. You don't want to mess with that kind of futuristic. Saving an iteration here. It's always good to save. It's always good to save iterations too, because sometimes files can get corrupted. And that really sucks. So here I copied the whole image of the character, made it a multiply, darkened it all the way up, made it a multiply. So this is how I'm going to put my shadow down. And I'm just doing a freeform translation thing here, erasing away where the hologram shield is. I still think I'm going to do something different with that, but I don't think laser holograms would really cast a shadow. So here's trying to get a shadow to be underneath the whips, but unfortunately, because I rendered it out with a shadow, it's not really going to work too well. Parts of it are working okay. So here I'm just erasing away parts of the shadow where it's not really working, because really the only parts I want it are just on that bottom edge of the whips. I don't know. Might try a different approach here. We'll see. So here I'm going in with my magic wand, just trying to select the parts that are not part of the shield, or part of the whips, sorry. So I can go back into my shadow layer. And erase away the parts I don't want. Again, this is also, I'm kind of trying to make up for my mistake of rendering out the shadow, because it wasn't a really good one, since this character was floating off the ground a little bit. There we go. That's better. Just want to drop that version of the layer down. I've got kind of a nice shadow I can use for that front part of the whip. And just kind of going to use warp a little bit so it doesn't look, so it looks like a shadow, not like part of the spikes or something. I'm just adding a little bit of blur to that shadow layer. Still not quite looking right, but that does not look right. Since the spikes are like right on the ground, you're going to get a pretty crisp shadow from that, especially if I want to have kind of a more crisp shadow on the character. So here I'm just putting an angle on it, and I'll probably need to go in and use warp or just paint it in, because that's looking pretty good right there. So here I'm just painting in the shadow, erasing parts away so that it'll work. Trying to keep in mind where my light source is. Not worrying too much about being, real specific, real precise on this. So probably we'll go back and lighten it up or blur it just a bit. I'm just kind of painting it all in. I'll go back and erase parts away. That's kind of getting there. I think it'll be good enough with the right opacity. So here I'm adding a gradient to my shadow of the character. And then what I like to do is go into blur, into lens blur, and oh, that's the wrong layer. That's the lens blur on my mask. So you want to make sure you select the actual shadow layer. Go into blur here. Let me move it so it's actually in the mask from my shadow, and just pull it up. So here I'm just adding a little bit of blur to the shadow on the dual whips. Just kind of cleaning it up a little bit. It's a little too strong. So it's kind of getting there. I mean, it's not perfect, but so here I'm kind of roughly going and selecting my whips. Duplicating them. I'm just messing with the lighting on them is a little bit wacky. You know, they always kind of had that rim lighting. It's a little strong. It's not bad, so I'm just lowering the contrast, maybe darken them up a little bit. But again, unfortunately, I rendered out that shadow, so it's kind of makes it difficult to work with that stuff. To work with adjusting the brightness, contrast, etc. on those, because I can't really easily select them out. So all this work is basically to make up for my mistake early on when I rendered it out. So I'm just going to adjust the brightness contrast on here. Just kind of getting annoying working with the shadow stuff, but it's important to get it right. So you can see how those whips are they're just a little too, they have too much contrast in them. I need to bring those down, contrast, and make them a little darker. Kind of matching things better now. I've got some artifacts over here I got to go in and erase. My magic wand didn't catch. So I got a couple different layers and things going on now. It's kind of messy. So I'm just going in and cleaning up things. Erasing away parts. So that's those parts in there. Part of the ground where I darkened it up, and because of how I rendered out that shadow, so just gonna have to manually go in here and clean things up. It's a little bit annoying, but it's fine. We're almost done with this. Just making sure I got the parts over here. As you can see, you got a little bit of artifacts there from kind of the edges of the alpha channel when I then duplicated the layer. So I'll probably go in and just fix those up a little here. See, I got that kind of line in there with the shadows from the different methods of doing the shadow here. So I'm just going to fill them in. So it's looking pretty good. But, you know, I'm really not feeling that shield. So I'm going to go ahead and go back into Max, remodel something, render it out, and bring it back in here.